Welcome to That's So Rad podcast. I'm your host, Travis Vonksness. This is a podcast about people, their passions, their life experiences, and their stories. As writer Frederick Buechner once said, the story of any one of us is in some measure the story of us all. All of us can learn something valuable from someone else's life and their stories. Join us for another conversation where we learn, laugh, and leave, seeing our own life in new ways. What's more rad than that? Welcome to That's So Rad. This is the first episode of the launch of the podcast with my old classmate from 1998 is our graduating year, Sir Brett Henry. Welcome to the podcast.
In the flesh, man. It is so nice to be reunited with you, buddy.
Man, it is. And so the little backstory before we get into Brett sharing about himself and then kind of our conversation is that kind of the whole idea on this podcast is wanting to just feature people in my life that have made an impact, people, new friends, old classmates, people that there's something about their life that just stands out in terms of, I don't know, like they have a spark, they have something, they're illuminating something in the world. Brett definitely has done that from a distance for me. Your humor, just I remember you being and kind of still see from afar and now at 45. So kind of the interesting thing, and we'll see how this goes, is Brett and I have talked for about 30 minutes before we were recording. But outside of that sacred window of connection, we have not even talked since graduation day of 98. And here we are. I'm putting this conversation on display. Brett, I don't know how much you're judging. I mean, but we're both in this together. I mean, I asked you to do this, but I mean, so
I was honored to be here, and it's as raw as it can get, and I'm honored that I've been lodged into a small corner of your subconscious for the last however years. Yeah, I mean, math is something that I take pride in. One of the few things, but it's been whatever 30
dude,
years. Yeah,
I think you're right. I mean, 98 to now. I mean, we're going on nearly 30 years, right? So
exactly.
That's
well, unfortunately, hopefully I can make it back for a class reunion at some point to the hallowed grounds of the rugby high. But it's nice that we've kind of that I'm not exactly out there all the time, and that if we do show up, that hopefully people are like, oh, well, yeah, you're not as unfortunate looking as I recall. But yeah, this is me. I'm in the flesh. I told Boggs that I'm not an AI rendering of myself because my wife killed me, and I promised, because he is such a hat guy, that I was going to wear this one.
He stepped it up.
We'll get into that a little bit. Yeah,
dude,
it's pretty nice. It's got the shape and everything.
I was gonna say we got to talk trucker hats and whenever you want to discuss that segment, but there's something that we have to talk about that. Okay, absolutely. That's an epic hat. Okay, so that's sort of the thing. So Brett, just catch me and everyone else up that's never met you a little bit about just who you are, your family, anything you want to share about where you're at.
Yeah, please. I'll try to keep this somewhat condensed. So I obviously born and raised in North Dakota. I had the pleasure of meeting you. Yes, I moved to rugby my sophomore year in high school. And I think the day before I came to school, I stole my stepsister's yearbook and I quickly memorized everybody's name. So the first day of school, I'm calling people by name and they're just like, what is going on here? Like, is this guy... is this dude some behind the scenes person who's here, with poor spirit? But anyway, I graduated from rugby, hung around North Dakota for another 6 years after that until I moved out to Maryland. So, a little bit of a culture shock. I mean, I think there could have been a reality series if they were as popular as they are now back then. Just dropping the country boy from North Dakota right in the smack dab of America's most dangerous city, even though it's not really that bad. But I couldn't have asked for a better path. It was pretty neat because you go from North Dakota being pretty conservative to, I just felt like it rounded me out pretty well. Just the people that I was able to
Huh.
meet from different cultures and things of that nature. As far as my career has taken me, I worked in hotels. So I started working in a hotel because my brother, Derek, younger than me
Yep.
by a few years, he was out here. His girlfriend at the time was going to Johns Hopkins,
Okay.
she was a nurse there. And I actually had an older brother who was living in New York. So we had a nice little pod of people out here, a support system for myself. And I didn't really know what I wanted to do with my life. I probably should have figured that out well in advance. But I ended up working in hotels for the next 16 years in various formats, and definitely from different positions. All the way from front desk to eventually running hotels, to then kind of stepping back as my family started to take shape into the revenue portion of hotels that allowed me to take weekends off.
Okay.
So I did
Wow.
that for a while. Yeah, I mean, and it's as non-glamorous as you could imagine. And talking about hats, a lot of different hats were worn. I worked a lot in boutique hotels, so I
Okay.
would go, from pouring coffee in the morning to having meetings, the revenue meetings with my general manager and my owners, to then make me working a night audit shift. And
Huh.
it really it taught me a lot. And then it got to the point that when I met my second wife, things just didn't work, that I was able to continue in that. So I've since stepped aside, and I am a stay-at-home dad now. So I take care of my three kids. I have a blended family, two kids from my first wife, and now I have a 3-year-old with my other wife. So yeah, we have a nice little blended family.
Man, dude, that's I mean, you are a trophy husband, like you told me. I
Well,
can
right,
tell.
yeah,
I
that's
mean,
pretty much. I have T-shirts that state that, but at the same time, yeah, I mean that's why the mustache and
yeah,
everything. I had to get
100%.
rid of the. I unfortunately am not confident enough to wear the beard like you do with all the gray. But yours is actually like pretty universally gray. I was mine was
It's
all patchy, so I had to just go down
well,
to the mustache.
that's well, and how long you had the stash? Also, just for my
Well,
way of context.
yeah, off and on, but for the past couple of years. So I
Okay.
actually shaved it off, I think, for a few days, and my kids thought I was some intruder in the house, so I quickly grew it back. Yeah.
Oh man,
But no,
it's a
my wife
great one.
seems to like it. I
No,
don't know why.
it's a good look on you. I mean, I
I,
thought, but and mine is more to hide all the moles, but
uh,
I no, actually, I just have had this for a long time. It's just I don't know. It's but you're right. The more we're 45 now,
okay.
and you just see how gray. I mean, it's just like God. You're just
We
that's the
don't feel this
downside.
though, but it's definitely some things that make it look. You speak of moles, that's like I take my shirt off at the beach and I have just a map on the back. It's like, yeah,
No, it's like
that's the only reason I
constellations.
haven't
The Big
ballooned into
Dipper on
a
the
bigger guy. It's like, yeah, I've already got that going against me, and I don't want anybody to necessarily notice me on the beach, so I'm going to try to keep it somewhat sleek.
man.
But yeah, I mean it's the mustache. I think my wife is a fan of it because it's a big hit here at the house. It's not as big of a hit when you're picking up your kid from the blacktop at the school. The people kind of look out of the corner of your eye, like the dude. Keep an eye on that guy.
Keep an eye on that guy.
Yeah, stay a
Well,
few feet away
also
from
with
the
that,
playground.
well, and with that trucker hat, I mean, you really have a
This
look
is
there, and I
nice.
mean,
I really
it's
like this.
it's
Yeah, it was
it
my 3-year-old. She's the boss. I have two. Well, my wife and then my 3-year-old, who's
that
also physically abusive to me.
well, be careful, but
Yeah.
that is a look you need to just keep going. So I love how you set this up so far already because you kind of went big picture. Feel like you took us to the journey ahead, even in this conversation. So you and I we parted ways in the great state of North Dakota, which I'm wearing just for Brett today. North Dakota is one of the finest that wore the purple. Jimmy Klein saucer,
Here he is.
uh,
Love it.
wearing my Youth XL of this. But
It's
and so
cheaper,
anyway,
man. The youth sizes are cheaper.
they are right, and for us smaller dudes, although now I'm really filling this thing out now on the belly, but that's so. But what I wanted to do, so great intro, great kind of a little more context of what you've went on to do in your life. What we're going to do is actually go backwards now and kind of pick up some of the story, both where you and I converge and then your life from there as you went to Maryland, and then kind of I'll ask you some questions along the way of just life lessons or things that shaped you in your journey.
Sure.
So there's a great quote by, I think it was a psychiatrist, very famous psychiatrist, who said, "When we're listened to, it creates us, makes us unfold and expand." So part of this conversation is that I think, Brett, you're going to unfold like an origami butterfly if I ask the right questions.
Please.
And so that's my goal.
I look forward to being unfolded. Yes.
I mean, yeah, okay, great. So let's go back to just where we left off, which was May of '98, at a little town. What are we? An hour from the Canadian border.
Yep.
The self-proclaimed geographical center of North America, which apparently has been taken from them, but then maybe regained under the table. I don't know. I've read about the story, but yeah. So
you've done a good job in weeding out your Canadian long vowels, by the way. But you weren't always originally from an hour from there. People, it still shows up once in a while. But yeah, I try to get rid of it. I'm like, it's not what defines me. So
thank you. I was going to ask you how your accent has come out from time to time in Maryland, but
it does. Yeah, we can.
Yeah.
Well, I mean, it's definitely the long vowels are something.
Yeah,
I'm like, if you think this is bad, you should hear my mom. She sounds
go
like
get the broom. Get the broom, Brett. Yeah, all that stuff.
Bagel. Yeah, a lot of long A's, long O's. Yeah.
I had a relative when we were up in North Dakota a few years ago, and I asked her, I said, "Can you say," the hard thing when you're trying to set somebody up to say it, though, is you got to kind of try to not say it in that way. So I said, "Can you say," because I'm going to then say it the wrong, or how I used to say it. So I'm like, "Can you say room?" And she's like, she very self-conscious, wasn't, she goes like, "Oh no," and I'm like, "Well, that was way worse. That was just way worse what you just did." So.
Yeah, I don't know. I mean, there's definitely something romantic about a certain language. I mean, Maryland has its own, and I'm sure you've experienced some of the same in South Carolina. But yeah, there's something romantic about it. And then it's like, well, why don't you sound like the people around here? And I don't think I ever want to try to incorporate that. So I'd rather keep my roots more.
There
so
we
than
go.
anything around here.
I respect it.
But so, yeah, let's look back.
Let's look back
to this.
Okay, so let's just reminisce just a little bit. I mean, it's as much for you and me than anything else. But so it's like a time capsule, I said, of like the late '90s. Here we are. Any memories around just school, life and rugby, each other? Who's going first here? I mean, probably
right.
Go ahead.
Well, like I said, I always valued you as a friend and maybe more as a threat. I part of what I saw as personal value for myself was trying to make people laugh. And you were always like a funny, but in a not necessarily a more philosophical funny, but it was like, it wasn't always like right at the surface. Like there might have been a little more thought behind your humor. Maybe that was part of your thing. You like to be a little more mysterious about it. And I think that resonated better with some of our classmates. And I had shared with you earlier. And I hope one day she sees this and knows how much she's impacted me. And no, I haven't been thinking about this for the past 30 years, but I do remember when we had a senior banquet, which was held out at the Rugby Country Club. And before we had to do that, you had to vote. Most likely to be successful. This, that, and the other. And one of the things, and I was like, if I don't win this, like I don't know how I'm going to be able to move on with my life. Was the funniest person. And I remember that Kylie Volk had, and I'm sorry, like I said, I'm not as connected with a lot of the people as I probably should be. We can maybe get to that in a bit, but
Yep.
I remember she voted you, and I wasn't angry at her because she didn't pick me. I was angry at her because she was right. I was just like, I wish I could be more like him, but I can't. And I'm going to stick to my own brand. So I do remember that. There were some other things I remember during the questionnaires. You also had to will people. Do you remember that?
Oh yeah.
Yeah. Yep. Sorry. And maybe I'd give it more thought. I also have. I'm pretty sure I have my senior yearbook laying around here at my like when we invite people over, talking about like icebreakers. I mean, if something doesn't icebreak better than having your senior yearbook, I'm like,
just laying out.
Yeah. No.
This,
And everybody thinking that knows us from back in the days, like that's when you peaked. Well, that's a pretty sad part. But yeah, you and I had some pretty good and fun times. That's for sure. Some riding
oh,
of stolen bike property.
oh
Like I said,
man.
I don't want to make you an accomplice to this. I was the one
Okay.
who had commandeered the bike, but you did stand on the
Well,
pedals as I wheeled it through the side of the high school. Remember, you came in through the front doors, and then there was like that wide side where you went by the gymnasium, you went by the theater, and then the shop class was on the left side. On the right side was the biography room, and it was just a simple pass through. And apparently, I just did not want senior privileges. So, in doing so, but what you did do was you were an influence on me with Mr. Manette, who was one of the shop teachers. Who I didn't. He was never even my teacher because, of course, that would have been too like masculine for me to actually be in a shop class. And he would oversee the study hall for which I lost, and Mr. Who was our president?
oh,
I'm drawing a blank. Mr. Ziegler, right?
Ziegler. There we go. Okay.
Yeah.
Yep.
So it's funny is like, he was like, man, I really like, I like you, Brett, but like, I just like you're making it hard on me, take away his senior privileges. And I don't know what it was. I just couldn't have nice things. So yeah, I remember you
Well,
being like you either suggested or did not discourage me from opening a can of sardines, placing it in the desk drawer, and it wasn't even, I don't think he was the one that noticed. I had mentioned to you just before we came on that it was such an intense smell that you couldn't even like your sense of smell failed you when you were inside that room.
it
You
was
could
so
only
for
smell it if you were like all the way down by Mr. Higby's classroom.
my gosh.
And
All
yeah,
right.
Mr. Higby was your guy though. You did the best Mr. Higby impressions. Yeah.
Oh man, boy, did I get red too? Boy, I forgot about that guy. So
Yeah.
a couple things we have to go back to just for fairness here. One is the humor thing. Well, that is amazing to hear. I didn't even know about that vote. If I was mentioned the same breath as your comedy, that I mean, I'm 45. That feels like wow. I feel good about that,
You would have taken a different career path, I think, which
dude.
would have been
It
bad. Yeah,
yeah,
you
you're
probably would
right.
have ended up dead in a gutter somewhere. Yeah.
I was gonna say, man, I have only met in my life since leaving rugby one other guy that somewhat in college reminded me of your sense of humor. Just when you talk about like both, I would say shock slash, but not overly. Let me couch this right here. 30 years later, um, not overly. I mean, not like derogatory, really. Not like you didn't go for the low hanging fruit of humor that high schoolers can,
Yeah.
like jock humor. There was like, oh, it's just like just But it was like it was super creative, and like I remember like some of your messages, yearbook messages, the way you'd your timing, but it was so creative and imaginative humor that it was like it was too good for rugby. It was like it wasn't appreciated the full extent. That's what it was.
Well, I appreciate. I unfortunately haven't figured out how to commercialize it. I think I would lay in bed, and it was just a matter of me bottling it up. I'm like, oh, I just thought of something funny. Let me write that down so I don't forget it when I wake up in the morning. And it's all about the delivery. Like, find a good opportunity to unleash that. And probably the yearbook messages were like a good platform. I could just fill it in or whatever.
Oh
So
yeah, I remember in college doing some kind of ridiculous film project where now I did have some stuff scripted that profs ended up having to say, and I know that wouldn't have been in my head if it weren't for you. But one of them was I had two history profs that were as awkward as history profs would be playing a game of Twister for this film, and it was like unbelievable. I mean, it was like,
you
I
would have
mean,
probably went viral
I
in
know. I
today's
think they had to
society.
go
You
to
were ahead of your
HR.
time. Yeah.
It was a Christian college. They had to go to HR after that. I mean, it was a very crazy
Yeah, they
scene.
lost their funding. That's
I
fine.
think so. But also, the bike incident, I feel like you. How would I say this? You were because of your skilled like I feel like you were endearing to all of the teachers. So you were definitely wild, but in a way that was under the radar, like because you just were. I think you made a lot of teachers laugh. Like you were a true class clown that I think teachers were like, oh man, Brett, I just need to, but I can't stop laughing. You know what I mean? Like
Yeah,
So
that was part of it. It's the hustler aspect, and I think it actually was maybe not as useful as I should have let it be. I let my mouth get myself into a lot of things, and then I got out of it the same way. And I think had I figured out a way to use it to better the world, it probably would have been a better thing for me. But I do agree with that. I mean, I found a way to toe the line. And
yes, that's
as soon like you take them to the edge, it's like, well, wait a second. Remember, I'm not
that's
the worst person. And
yes.
It's Mr. Zingle, right? Is or
Zing,
what?
Zwingle or
Yeah, Zwingle. Yeah, I
there we
just
go.
remember what. Speaking of Kylie Bulk, I worked at Pizza Hut with her, and it's funny now because, well, not to get into the whole tipping society and sidebar this, but I was just at the Orioles game, and it's like literally you go through a market, and then the queue is the automatic was 20% to add to the tip. I'm like, it was funny because I remember I was at $35 check when I was working at Pizza Hut, and I don't know if North Dakota's advanced in their tipping skills since, but I just remember him calculating out, and at the time it might have only been 10%. I don't know. He's like
Sure,
three
yeah.
dollars and 50 cents. I can't leave you that much. Here's $2. I just remember, and then I had to like lie about my tips just to be able to make ends meet. But it was like you would work and you'd get 20 tables, and you'd be lucky to make like $20 in tips. It
Man.
was crazy. Yeah,
Oh my
Mr. Zwingle.
gosh.
Yeah. Because Eric Zwingle was, and then he had a
Okay,
daughter that was in our class as well. But yeah,
that's
it was
right.
funny. Yeah, Mr. Zwingle was, and like I said, you had just mentioned, there were
Yeah.
always our physics teacher was Miss Hagen, right?
Yeah, I think so.
Yeah, so I would interrupt class, and then
Yep.
I'd figure out a way to make her laugh, and I don't know how I did it, but that's having conversations with my kids now. It's like, yeah, it's in your DNA to be a little bit of a fast talker and a hustler, but like don't
That's
do things like I did, please. Use it
don't
for the betterment of
well,
humanity.
I mean, you are 45. I mean, your life is maybe halfway. I mean, you do have still time to
To
right the
carve
ship.
out a legacy.
Yeah, to carve
Yeah,
out a
I mean,
legacy. I mean,
you,
and you are. You're
well, you
carved.
really think about that, and I'm sure you are as well. But you've done some good things, and I've followed along from a distance, thanks to social media. But you really start to think about your legacy. Things with a lot of it's what you pass on to your kids, and
Yep.
the good and the
Yep.
lineage there. But
Yep.
you start to think about, yeah, what can I do to when I go into the ground? What are
That's
people going to
right.
remember me by?
That dude, that is
And
exact. I exactly. I'm
it's
thinking a lot about that.
It's going to be a guy who rode a bicycle through Rugby High School
Well,
in
because you
1998.
did bring that up again, I do think that I do. This is the last part of that memory is that I think that I don't see again. You towed the line, so I feel like you were always in these skirmishes like that that were like, yeah, it wasn't really offensible, really punishable. But that one, I think it was senioritis last week. I was like, I have, I was pretty good overall, so I was like, man, I
You
got
were,
to go out wild. I got to do
yeah,
something. I have to have one thing here, and I did. We grabbed the bike. That was a no brainer for you. I mean, you keep
Quite
acting
a
like I
character.
just got you on there, but it was like you were just waiting for it
Right,
and we
I
did
was
ride the
trying to pull the
hallway.
loop. Yep.
Yeah, we did ride a whole loop in the hallway, and I think there was some sort of small, like, I don't know what we faced, disciplinary, but those are the kids that teachers just can't stand at the end of the year because it's like, dude, for 4 years, and then don't, you're gonna be an ass for, I mean, come
Last
on,
day. Yeah, I get it.
yeah,
Well,
so
I didn't mean to tarnish you at all, but I'm glad that you came along. So there's always misery in company,
yeah,
company and
uh,
misery, or whatever,
company
however it
misery.
goes. Yeah, sorry, you're the one that has all the cliches and
Uh,
philosophical
Phil,
sayings.
okay, well, I just have some quotes hung up, but I do. My last thing on you in high school back then, the most pristine parted hair, um, that Eric from Boy Meets World would have been jealous of. So
Yes,
that
it's
look
the
at that.
one thing. Yeah, it's a
Now
little
you did
gray.
lay the gauntlet down on that because I know I've had the bald look for years. So
Right.
if you're listening to this, this is a reminder to go to YouTube to watch this, subscribe to That's So Rad, watch the video. That's way better because you have trucker hats here. But I have had a bald look for a long time. But look at this though.
Very nice. No, that's not
Okay,
so bad.
so it's not so. But so I'm just showing that there is something there.
There's hair. I was
There's hair.
actually surprised, pleasantly surprised.
Yeah, no, but I mean you have beautiful locks. But
Thank you.
it was so.
Yeah, it gets a little thinner. I'm like, Yeah,
dude,
I was outside all weekend. That's why I
that
felt it
is.
appropriate to wear a shirt that matches my skin hue. So you can see, yeah, I got, it's actually a crab. That's the Maryland theme.
Oh yes,
Yeah,
yeah.
the lobster hue and the crab shirt. So
It's a great Maryland look.
thank you.
Have we laid to rest high school rugby, that chapter? Do you feel like?
I think so. Yeah. I mean, Mr. Healy was our guidance counselor. He tried to steer me, like tried to stop me from ruining my life, and I didn't listen. So I've taken a few topsy turvy turns to get to where I am today. And then and Mr. Munson, who was our college prep teacher, he did say that he feared that I was going to do well in life, and I think there was some kind of an interpretation. He was also the JV basketball coach when I really realized that my footwork or lack thereof was not going to take me places. And I remember like the last game, he let me, I don't know, he didn't let me play as much as I thought I would. And I just remember like
Oh man.
staring at he because in North Dakota you didn't have a high budget for
Yep.
youth sports. He was
Yep.
also the bus driver, and I just remember like him looking at me in the rear view mirror back at me, and I'm staring right back at him. And I mean, I do miss that guy. I mean, for as much as I or
Oh
little I've
man.
done with that, I do appreciate all the teach. Mr. Grockow, our
There.
math
You're
teacher.
right. We had some great teachers. We
Yeah,
really
Miss.
did.
Oh, and then Miss Linseth was she was the drama teacher as well. Well, Mr. Healy as well. So they were great. I do cherish a lot of the memories I had in doing theater and drama as well.
Oh, you were in all that. I remember you
I
playing
was,
baseball,
yeah.
but okay, yeah,
Well,
yeah.
it's funny because like, I was whatever at baseball. My son's actually he's 14, and it's funny because he, now it's like, everything's bigger and better,
Yep.
and he's 14 throwing 70 miles per hour, and it's like that's not enough. Like he's got to throw 80
Right.
by the time, he
Right.
hits puberty, and it's like, man, if I could just send him back to North Dakota, he could actually probably flourish there. But so he might
Gosh.
not even play high school baseball, and I'm like, well, you could try drama or theater. It's not so bad. Maybe a little debate club or something. So.
Yeah, man, you were really well rounded. But you make a good point. I'm in South Carolina. My son is playing football,
Yeah.
who I don't know, how much of a shot, big school down here. It's like, dude, if he was in rugby,
Right. He'd be a
man,
stud.
just like what you're saying. It's just
They'd be
like,
like
gosh.
there would be a lineage. They'd show like you and him, you in the
Yeah, right.
black and white photo, him in the full color. It's like a chip off the old block. It is crazy though. Like I
It is
remember
though. You
because
think of that.
they're
I
talking, oh yeah, 14 years old, you got to be throwing 80 miles per hour. I'm like, if we faced an 80-mile-per-hour like kid in high school, we were like shaking in our boots, and like that's
right.
that's like the bare minimum to even like get into the tryout for the
Jeez, that's
JV team here.
unbelievable.
Yeah,
That's
I mean it's all
unbelievable.
relative, I guess. Yeah, but higher population.
Yeah, that's true. Okay, well,
But
that
yeah,
was
I think that about closes the book on that. So
that was fun, and that was a fun look back at time at RHS.
yep.
Um, okay, so let's keep moving forward. So we can camp out here for a little bit, but us both coming from North Dakota, it's a very people don't know anything about this state, and
Right.
our most famous, actually, one of our most famous people, who's a journalist, no longer is with us. Eric Severide, I believe,
Yep.
was a Walker Cronkite, era, but he's a legend. He has a great line. He says, "North Dakota is a large rectangular blank in the nation's mind." And so,
Wow.
and on top of that, fourth least populous, fourth windiest, second coldest, most treeless. Question to
Really?
you is, and they said Nebraska's second with double the trees.
Wow.
Random question for you on the spot.
Hmm.
Knowing it's the most treeless, what percentage of the state would you say is covered by trees?
Well, sorry, I know you just want a quick answer. We have shelter belts. Those are it's literally
Okay,
just to keep the wind from blowing from one side of the state to the next. I mean,
for sure.
my dad being a farmer, I would say probably is it a fraction of a percent or is it like 1%?
Okay, you're in the
Are we getting
ballpark
into
now.
fractions? I don't
No,
know.
no, no, no. It's in the multiple numbers, but you're
Really?
right there at 1%, 3%.
Wow. Yeah. I mean, like I said, you had to grow it just so the topsoil didn't get blown away. That's actually like it's funny because we hadn't discussed this. It's like the interesting thing I tell people. Anytime it's windy here, I'm like, yeah, you don't know anything about wind. The wind starts from the west side of the state, goes all the way to the east, and we
Dude,
had to literally build tree lines to keep the
yes.
topsoil from blowing away because that's our
That's
our
that's
main
such a good
economy.
That is such a good.
3%. Well, good.
It's a interesting thing too, and I've done some. You and I've talked about we're at this age where I think we're at, we look. I'm very nostalgic anyway, but looking back at our life, we're kind of at that stage where we kind of think more about that kind of stuff. And so I've actually read some books on North Dakota. I'm very fascinated by the way we're formed by the land we come from, like,
Hmm.
and so like even like how we were shaped by the wind, how we were shaped by our experience in a really hard state that I don't know about you, but there's no way I could ever live there again.
Right.
I mean,
Yeah, I
it's
mean,
great to
there's some
visit,
things
but
that, yeah, I totally agree with you there.
yeah, I mean, for a variety of reasons, but one of them being those things, the wind, well, not just the wind, but just the extreme temperatures. So, but yeah, any other thoughts on just that state, what it was like growing up in a hard place?
Right. I don't like the cold weather. Being out in Maryland, it's so funny because people are like, "Oh, if you don't like the weather in Maryland, just wait." I'm like, I'm pretty sure they say that about every single
Every
state, but yeah,
every
it's like
state.
this isn't an exclusive joke to just Maryland. But I mean, I think it shaped us to be like a lot of the things that I learned. I mean, I weren't taught to me by my parents. It was just the ability to live freely there. I mean,
Yeah,
I think it's also a different time growing up in the 80s
sure.
and the early
Yep.
90s is, we were able to kind of do whatever we wanted then. And then I had four brothers and, we learned more from mistakes than we were taught by our parents. And that goes from, just growing up straight up Americana to
Yep.
financial things and things, so hopefully what we learn from that, I can try to help my own children to not make some of the same mistakes that I did.
Yep.
But I can say that, like said you said, I would never move back there, but I don't know if
Yep.
I'd ever change where I came from.
Yeah,
So
yeah, yeah. That's a good 100% on that. I, that's how I look at it too. Like I was deeply shaped by. I mean, I grew up farming with my dad.
mhm.
Lost my dad a few years ago, and just the memories around just farming together, and I think the ruggedness of what it meant to just kind of face all that adversity. I mean, it no doubt made him who he was, and me
Well,
too.
he was a good
So
man, right? Yeah, my dad
yeah.
wasn't quite as hard of a farmer worker. He was a farmer as well. He didn't work quite as hard as yours.
Well,
Him too.
my dad had to work hard because our machine was so bad. I mean,
Right.
geez, it was bad.
Yeah, we were pretty privileged in that respect. And my dad was always kind of like the black sheep farmer of the area that he would farm. You go to the elevator and you'd pull up and it wasn't like, oh, there's Bill Henry's son, the
Right.
next great farmer. No, not quite. No, there's that kid's gonna have to overcome some things and make it in this
He's-
world. Well, there's a reason why none of us took over the farm. I mean, I wouldn't. You have that
yep.
hard. I'm not saying that I didn't work hard,
Yeah. Yeah.
I'm just taking it easy as a stay-at-home dad, as my
Yeah.
children are screaming upstairs. But in any event, I wouldn't say that like my dad being the person that he was. Again, I love him. He was a flawed man, but at the same time, I learned a lot about what not to do as well. So, and
Yeah.
again, it's only we say we only knew what we knew. It was the same thing in North Dakota. It's like, yeah,
That's right.
you kind of raise yourself. I mean, I can't even imagine. I have a fourth grader now. I walk her a half mile to school, and I don't even need to do it. But it's like, man, I remember when I lived in Fargo for a year, and I was walking home by myself over a mile in first grade. I was just like, yeah, it was
Yeah.
whatever. I mean,
It's
and
just not
there's
what.
kids around here that still do that. I get, like I
Right.
said, it's all relative, but
Right.
no, I North Dakota, it was a good place, I think, to grow up, but something that once you kind of moved out of there, it's the reason why a lot of people leave there, and it's
Yeah.
unfortunate, but yeah, what are you gonna do? I cannot, I do not miss the cold, the winters.
Yep.
I don't do that anymore. So,
Yeah. Yeah. No, that's a thing. Do
well,
you need? Sorry. Do you need to check on your
no,
kids?
no. I was just saying they're that if I start to smell smoke, does the smell actually, does that come down? No, they're fine.
That's the
My
smoke.
wife is here as well, so no, I'm not. You're like,
Okay.
I thought you're just talking about how you wouldn't raise kids like that anymore, and your kids are just running amok upstairs. No, I
Just
I
on
do
their
have
own.
my other kids are home from work. I are from school. I have a
Okay.
14-year-old and a 10-year-old as well. So no,
Okay. Gotcha.
everything's fine. And if not, I mean, this is far more important to me.
Well, I'm honored that
The
you're
only thing that is
let.
this ramekin of mixed nuts. That's the only thing that's distracting me right now. This is my wife. Like I always used to say, you just dig right into the bag. Everything's in a ramekin now. I never used a ramekin. I didn't even know what a ramekin was for 40 years, and now everything's got to be in a ramekin.
I don't even know what it is, so that's where I'm
Yeah,
at.
it's not
It's a
important.
is it a Maryland thing? It's a man. You
It's
guys are
a Jessica Maryland thing.
highfalutin. Okay,
Yeah,
I got you.
yeah.
All right, so there's North Dakota. We're kind of continuing on this journey. What other things, just about the state, things like that, but just that kind of shaped you in your youth or into your 20s, just kind of things that kind of as you could continued on your journey through life.
Right. Well, I kind of had mentioned this earlier, but a lot of my youth and even into my 20s, I there was a lot of insecurity. The way
Hmm.
that I behaved was a reflection of that as well. But I don't know necessarily why that was. Maybe just never feeling like I was good enough. So I was always
Hmm.
trying to portray something possibly that I wasn't. So I think as far as confidence is concerned, I think it allowed me to try to, I don't know, explore that within myself a little bit, and I didn't mature as fast as I probably could have.
Hmm.
And I guess what that looks like and the expectation of how mature a 30-year-old should be. And there's a lot of things that I've learned since I got out here, but as far as North Dakota, there was, as far as like my faith, for instance,
Hmm.
some relationships with the higher power, with God. I mean, it's definitely more ingrained, I think, back where we're from. It's just how it
Yeah,
is.
sure.
Maybe less to do. You have, why not head to church 3 times a week? So as far as that, I'm not saying that it's something that I practice as much as
Yeah,
I like, but it's definitely part of who I am, and
sure.
some of the values that I've had.
Hmm.
It's funny because Maryland is a little is totally different from a lot of different ways, but as far as political and things like that,
Yep.
I think it's allowed me to be more grounded. I mean,
Hmm.
I see some of the things that my family and friends say and do, and
Yep.
it's something that and what I'm surrounded by now, I kind of see both pictures, so it's allowed
Sure.
me to kind of, I wouldn't say not stand for anything, but be able to toe that line and figure out what makes things go, what's important to people, if that makes
Yeah.
any sense, without taking this into like too much of a political conversation. But
Well, like for instance, I think what I'm hearing maybe somewhat is like I think even for like I mean, there's a true thing just about like ignorance, like and it I've kind of come to see that of like you can be I mean, say for instance, racism can come on different levels, but one thing is
right,
just being ignorant, and I do think we came from a state we just like Native Americans would have been really the only other
yeah,
uh,
minority,
yeah, exactly. And they were horribly, obviously, we know their historic treatment by the government, and even like to this day of just sort of the mindset of like how I think, I think some people from North Dakota would still look at Native Americans. It's like, well, yeah, but the government committed genocide in this group of people, took
right,
everything, and you wonder why, there's rampant alcoholism, but we're so judgmental. And it's just like, whoa,
right,
but also to be so surrounded by so many ethnicities and experiences that you are like I am in South Carolina. And then I mean there is that line of tension of kind of politely challenging that when you can with your family and
sure.
because yeah, that's where we come from. That's so
Right, and I'm like I said, I'm not trying to change how anybody else thinks or sees it, but a lot of times it's like say the relativity. Like you only know what you know when you're only surrounded by
yeah,
that. You see some of the
sure.
suffering from other groups.
Yep.
It's like yeah, maybe I don't need to live as comfortably, and if there's some misappropriation of tax funding,
Yeah.
it kind of goes with how it's with the territory, and but at the same time, I mean, I'm very fortunate, so my
Yeah.
if something's important to other people who are important to me, then I'm gonna tend to side with her. My wife is an executive, or she's a partner with a big consulting firm
Mm-hmm.
in cybersecurity, and with her being able to bring in the income and see, and if it's important for her, if she's like, yeah, well, if some of my tax money has to go to the
Yeah.
betterment of society, that's so be it. And her being a woman, not saying a woman in a male dominant industry, for her to
Yep.
have to bust through a lot of those glass ceilings to see what she's been
Yeah.
able to accomplish.
Yeah.
I mean, you just, it gives you a different perspective,
That's
and
really cool.
and I don't
Yeah.
I don't try to draw hard lines, and I don't think it defines people, even for the people who are very heavy on either side of
Yep.
that
Sure.
spectrum. I try to see through that. I try to say that isn't everything that this person is, even though in today's society, with how hot of a topic is,
Yep.
it really does tend to divide people, and that's what
It-
people see. But
right. And then divides us, and now we're so polarized. When we realize, I don't think there's the extremes that's portrayed. I mean, there's certainly extremes of people,
right,
but I think what seems to be as extreme isn't as I think in reality it feels like.
I
Um,
agree with that.
yep. So what so where in this journey kind of is your, now you're in, well, from going to North Dakota into Maryland, you're into the hotel, I guess. Was the hotel industry kind of your, what did you land on right away out of the gate out there?
Yeah, so I moved out here for an internship because my brother
Okay.
was located out here. They've all since moved back, and
Okay.
yeah, it was just, it not only is hotel was it a career, it's like a lifestyle. It really
Yep.
just, I mean, if you weren't working 6 days a week, you're not a hard worker. If you're like
Yep.
if you wanted a day an extra day off, you almost felt guilty. You always had to have your phone
Sure.
on you.
Yep.
So it kind of engrossed. That's where I met my first wife. So
Mm-hmm.
I have two children with my ex wife. So we're a blended family. I don't know if I had mentioned that during our conversation here. But a lot of the people that I know now are because of the work that I had done in hotels.
Yep.
It's funny how do you try to retrace where you are in your life now, and if everything hadn't fallen in place the exact way it has, I would have never met my current wife. And I'm not
Yeah.
saying that's my
Yeah.
current wife's my only life, but I have
Sure.
another child now, a perfectly blended family. But I worked in hotels to a point that my wife was pregnant with our youngest, and she was off on maternity leave for 6 months. She came back and I was still working. It's kind of a hard thing to swallow. There's certain roles defined by society of, hey, if somebody's going to be a stay-at-home parent, it's typically the mother.
Right.
And it's funny because I'll go into conversations, my wife will have galas or things like that,
Yep.
and it's what's the first question somebody asks you when you go and you're having a conversation with another? Oh, hey, what do you do? It's like, yeah, not a whole heck of a lot. I stay at home with the 3-year-old, let her boss me around all day. But it's funny because it's a lot of these people are, I don't know, executive level, and they're half the people, and sometimes it's the same person's like, man, that's pretty pathetic, but at the same time, I admire you. He's like, yeah, I don't think
I
enough
think it's
credits
amazing.
given. Yeah,
Yeah.
not enough credits given for it. Not only
Yeah.
because it is hard work, but it's a little bit of a pride thing. You
Yep.
have to swallow your pride because of societal norms, and it's like that's not what
Exactly.
people expect. So you
For
know
sure.
and then
Do
the second question is typically, you basically, hey, that's how you start a conversation, and
Yep.
then you can go from there.
Yep.
But it's like,
Yep.
yeah, by the way, I don't really have a career, so we can just stop this conversation right now.
Well, that boy, that's a good point. I was listening to something a while back of where, it's in the way even we engage one another. There's this sort of measuring we want to do. Now, it can even come from good intentions, but I feel like there's a lot like, how can I? So, what do you do? I'm going to try to fill you out, and it's like, what about like what you're saying is a reminder to me of like, I don't know how maybe be more sensitive or even around that question. I found myself at church one day, like right away, the get Goku. There's a couple right there. What do you do? What do you do? Well, she's almost apologetic. She's a stay-at-home mom,
Yeah,
and like, why am I? And like, why am I asking that right away? Like, what do you
right.
do? Because then
Yeah,
it's easy. Like, because then it seems like I'm putting my worth or the worth of this conversation on what you do, and it's
right.
not.
Yeah.
So, man, for you facing that,
Well, right, and then it's also for my wife to then have a husband, but it's something that she's comfortable with. I mean, she always definitely protects the narrative. I mean,
yeah,
it was something that worked for us. I mean,
yeah,
I unfortunately, there are financial requirements to raising a
sure,
family, and she was definitely the bigger breadwinner. It would have been great for me to continue working and for her to step aside, but with three kids, all
yeah,
between the ages of 3 and 14. I mean, I say stay at home dad. I'm a human taxi service that and that doesn't get paid
that's
from the
true,
children, but it's
right?
between sports and just pickup times of school.
Yeah.
And
dude.
my 3-year-old just is actually just going into preschool next year, so that's going to add a whole nother
Yeah,
element to it. It definitely is a lot, and just making lunch and just the monotony. I mean, it can get a little lonely when all you're doing is talking to a 3-year-old. That people are like, oh, I couldn't do that. I'm like, man, it's not like it's like everything's like hunky dory and roses. Yeah, I
right,
mean, if you could do it in little bits and pieces or bouts of like, yeah, hey, I'd love to have 4 or 5 days off in a row, and then it's like, all right, well, now I'm starting to get a little restless, and that's
right.
kind of how my wife is as well. She was able to take off a lot of time. Her company is good about giving time off for the parental leave, but at the same time, I mean, she is so just plugged in
Yep,
constantly because she has to be, that
sure.
even on a Saturday, like, and I tend to, take care of the household chores, but like she is looking for something to do on a Saturday because she gets anxious if she isn't constantly on the go or, having to do something. So
Yeah,
it's not easy for her. It's not easy for me, but it is kind of funny how, like I said, you go into these conversations, and a lot of what we have in common is what you're able to relate to somebody based upon your profession. It's like, yeah, I can't
yeah.
really relate to you there, but
Yeah, but I
like,
think that's like a good reminder of like even just in our conversations of I don't know, I guess walking the balance between being very genuinely interested and curious about people's lives and
right.
also kind of being careful around that question of like, hey, maybe that isn't right out of the gate and maybe more let them lead with maybe it's something else we try to explore because it can quickly put us into corners and judgments and oh you're that or I love that you are just by your life kind of challenging that common stereotype of men at home or whatever and doing it in an awesome way. I'm sure you're a really awesome fun dad. The I was going to say what's interesting too is like you talk about like growing up with sort of that just insecurity of like do people like me and that's kind of what was the catalyst of a lot of your humor and all that. And then here you're faced with at 45, like you kind of said in these corporate conversations, like almost the question that's like hitting at that the most, right? Is it? I mean, a little of that, like, and how you've kind of, I guess, grown to kind of,
Yeah, I think my personality allows it. I just,
yeah,
I'm more comfortable with myself, and I guess it just
yep,
happened at a perfect time. Like I said, the insecurities. Now I'm to the point that it's like, yeah, if I don't have to conversate with people for a few days, I'll survive. I mean, I don't
right,
want to turn into the curmudgeon old guy like my
yeah,
father-in-law. It's like, leave
yeah,
me alone. I don't want anything to do with anyone. I mean,
sure,
and there's just people who everybody's going through something. So
right,
it's really, you really have to, when you talk about a filter, like put that through where somebody might not be as friendly or like what you were expecting out of them, but you just don't know what somebody's going through. You just have to try to remember that. And like I said, it was definitely at first a little bit of a pride swallow, and
yeah,
I certainly didn't want to step away for that. Even as much as the hotel industry was like so hectic. I mean, when you go from that to then
yeah,
nothing, where you're just
yeah,
like, you wake up and it's like,
yep.
I don't have to drink my coffee and head out the door at 7:30 to get there and work a 12-hour day. So,
That's man. Well, I will just add on my side of this is so I work remotely for America's Kids Belong, but
mhm.
it's not full time. And I do some care for my brother, but I have both my wife and I have a lot of flexibility to be home with kids. And I've been home
Nice.
largely not well, I mean, I would say since 16 or so.
That's awesome.
And yeah, and I think that life is a blink. It is so short. And this gold amount of time that we have at home with our kids is
Hmm.
not an I mean that is not an underrated that is and there's people I think if we could go back at time and look back at our lives like how many men that were 110% into their career working 60 hours a week and like your experience at the hotel would
Yep.
give anything to just be a taxi to be with their kids more
I
that's
mean, it's almost like I also have some regret because I have two older kids and I wasn't able to do that. And now
yeah
I'm like,
exactly
I cheated myself out of that bond. I mean, I still have a great relationship with my children, but like I
sure
have a 3-year-old who
right
basically like is dependent on me completely, and that was not the case with my older
right
one. So it's just a special bond, and I
yeah
definitely I almost feel bad to a degree that my wife isn't able to experience. It's just not how she's programmed or built, and
Yeah. Yep.
whether that's in her DNA or
Yeah.
if there's something she's had to adapt to become in the last 25 years. But it's definitely, yeah, I do not have any regrets. That's definitely a blessing, and I'm glad that I'm able to recognize that in the moment. Like it
Yep.
isn't like, sitting there after the kids all left the house and like, man, I really had it pretty good. Like being able to appreciate that in the
Yep.
moment, it's been a blessing for sure.
That's awesome. Yeah. That's
And
cool.
they like, and she likes my old, like if I repeat a joke to my wife, she like will call me out on it. And there's jokes that, don't quote me on what they are, but the 3-year old just like thinks I'm funny. It's like, that's awesome.
It's just dad being awesome.
Right.
You're
Just making
you're
funny noises. I mean, she pretends to make me things, and then I pretend to die, and then I resuscitate myself and tell her how yummy it is, and yeah, try like talk about a range of yeah, that's me. Yeah,
well,
all in. I learned it all
you're
from
all
Miss
in.
Linseth, from Miss Linseth and
I was
Mr.
gonna
Healy.
say
Yeah.
you're just living it out. It's culminated to now as a dad at home. Like here you
Who
go.
would have
Like
known?
you're
It's yeah,
you're an
it's like
all star.
why do I have to learn organic chemistry in college? It's like why do I have to do all this to, like
Right.
show this range to portray a character in one of these one act plays? Yeah.
Exactly. Well, kind of then, I know from afar, one of the things uh, that it's, obviously stood out watching your life and you, but is your huge connection to Baltimore Orioles baseball.
Ah,
So let's land the plane there for a little bit. Like the love of the Orioles, baseball itself. What is going on with all that?
yeah. Well, so I mean, even growing up in North Dakota,
Yep.
the Twins were big. Kirby
Sure.
Puckett was as big,
Yeah.
larger than life. Of course, things didn't end so well. Don't meet your heroes.
Yeah.
Things
Yeah. Yeah.
he kind of fell off there. But I was just, being in Baltimore, in my mid 20s, and the Orioles, when I moved here, were terrible. We're talking 2004. They were really bad. They're bad again now, but they were terrible. So you could go to a game and for $5, drink a $5 beer or whatever. It
Yep.
was relatively cheap thing to be able to do, but in having a son as my firstborn and having that bond, we go down to spring training a lot, and it's just it's something to do in the summertime. It's nice to be able to listen to it on the radio or watch it on the TV. But yeah, I am unfortunately a little more connected than I like to be. As you can see in the background here, I still I have redabbled in baseball cards, and which really came to a head during the pandemic. And
Uh,
I don't want to say like when people think about me, they think of the Baltimore Orioles, but it's a nice thing to be able to bond. I have a lot of friends who
yeah.
are Orioles fans as well, and it's a nice thing to do. Especially you talk about a teenager. I have a 14-year-old boy, and it's funny because I think even my wife and his mother have a hard time. Just like I don't know what it's like to be a 10-year-old girl. It's like when
Yep.
you hit that puberty and you talk about insecurities and wondering who you are, and he doesn't speak, hey, how was school? Good.
Yep.
Okay.
Yeah. Yeah.
Cool. That's awesome. Well, in any event, you go to a baseball game and he opens up a little bit. So
Yeah.
it's a nice thing to be able to
Yeah.
bond. He's not in his room playing video games that the Orioles are on. So for that, I am very thankful.
Man.
Should it be as big of a thing as it is? Probably not. I grew up. You're wearing the Jimmy Kleinsausser jersey. I grew up a Giants fan in North Dakota with
Yes, that's right. I
Lawrence
remember that.
Taylor as well. Yeah, the Tyrone Wheatley jersey. I got to
That's
find
right,
that thing.
dude. I
Yeah.
can picture it now.
Did I tell you that? Well, I'll get to that in just a second. But in any event, it's funny because growing up in North Dakota in 2000, I would have been a sophomore in college, and the Giants lost to the Ravens in the Super Bowl. So it's
Yep.
funny. I
Yep.
came out to Baltimore and surrounded by the Ravens. My
Oh
son's a big
man.
Ravens
Yeah.
fan. It's funny because I was like, I hate the Ravens, but
Right.
I cheer for the Ravens just as much. It's funny
Okay.
once you get into
Yeah.
older age, it's like whatever. But what was I talking about? Oh, Tyrone Wheatley. So
Yeah.
when I was working in hotels, Tyrone Wheatley actually became the Morgan State, which is one of the colleges
Okay.
in Baltimore, their head coach. He stayed at the hotel, right? So
What?
no, I kid you not. He comes up to me and I like profess my love. I'm like, this is kind of weird because yeah, you're Tyrone Wheatley. It's not like you're this. Like he
Right.
could. I mean, he wasn't rude, but he's like I literally could not care less about this conversation. I'm like, I would thought you would think that would be kind of funny that somebody remembers you.
Right,
And
because he's
he
not like, I
no,
mean,
I mean he
some
was big for Michigan, I guess,
sure,
but yeah,
yeah,
he
yeah.
was running back. He came in and he was before they were good during a pretty dark period. But yeah, I mean it might just also be his personality. But yeah, standing right in front of me, I'm like, I used to own your jersey. Like I
Wow.
wore your jersey when I was in high school. I thought
And he didn't
I
really,
personally would have been flattered, but
right,
he
but he
didn't
was
seem
just
to care
like,
as much. Yeah, so I mean,
not so,
like I said, I just cast as many nets as possible, like on in many teams. So like, I use that as an excuse as if the Ravens were to ever win, like, oh well, my son cheers for them, so I'm also their fan. Because people are always like, well, you can't have two favorite football teams and things like that. I'm like, well, I've seen the misery of Baltimore sports, so it's like if
well,
the Ravens win, it's almost like a win for the Orioles because like, yeah, we need anything we can get. Well, like
that's,
you know, as a
you
Minnesota fan,
know, yeah,
right?
there's a reason this is purple. It's the choking for 60 years. So,
I
yeah,
feel so bad. You're the face of it all too. I know a lot of Vikings fans, but you're definitely when I'm like, geez, it's
the
like,
fate,
well, even the Vikings lost to the Giants was
yeah,
2 years ago in the
oh my
playoffs.
gosh, yes.
Yeah,
Oh,
sorry about
dude,
that.
thank you. And like, as we're on this track for a second of the commiserating suffering between the Orioles and the Vikes, um, the most Vikings things that ever happened to me too was actually the Minneapolis Miracle because
All right.
yep, and you don't know the story directly, but so what happened to me then, being the face of the Vikings, I have a lot of Panthers and Falcons friends around, that's where we're at. And
Yep.
so what happens in that is my self-protection. I literally have seen five, I believe, NFC championship losses in a row. In a row. I mean,
That's terrible.
one to your Giants, 41-0 in 2000.
Yeah, that's right.
Yep, but literally five in a row. Okay, and some of these are like a team that doesn't even show up. Like it's not even just like it almost seems rigged. Like the
Yeah.
Vikings go to they just it's like how can you not even get off the bus and then you like fumble every so Minneapolis Miracle Saints game. I'm seeing the script play out. I'm seeing towards the end the leads getting blown. I know there's going to be a missed kick. I
Yep.
just can't. The heart can't. So I remember in that moment, I walk out and I literally left. And all of a sudden, my phone gets blown up by, dude, did you see the, no way. And I'm like, okay, so the one play
Yeah.
that the Vikings have that's a not Vikings moment, I actually, out of self protection, leave and I don't witness it.
Yeah, but it wouldn't have happened had the
Yeah,
universe, the sports universe revolves around you. Yeah,
but here's the,
I have a confession to make when you're done with this story.
no, no,
Yeah.
no, go ahead. Go ahead.
Well, no, I mean it was the same thing. It was 2014, and Delman Young. It's a famous hit in Orioles history, and the Orioles were losing, and the biggest sports moment for Baltimore
Oh,
baseball since 1983, and he hits this double after I'd already walked out of the stadium,
oh
and
my
yeah,
gosh.
so
Dude,
I still don't hear the end of it. I don't know if your family and friends are as cruel to you for
Uh, well, most of us are in the same boat, but friends, yeah. No, I think people just recognize, hey, this guy's fragile with the Vikings. Just be
right.
careful. I do love what you said about baseball, though, because I don't appreciate baseball. I wasn't a Twins fan. I wasn't a baseball fan.
Yep.
Lived in St. Louis, so cards there
The
is
Lou.
the Lou. Everything's the cards there.
Yep.
But I do appreciate the slowness of it, and I love what you said about your son and that being a great entry point in the conversation. I wonder if that's something baseball has that few other sports have, that
Right. Well, yeah,
space in
there's
the
just so
slowness.
much dead time.
Yeah,
It's
yep,
pitches. There's 250 pitches, and in between each pitch, even in the abbreviated with the pitch clock now, there's 20 seconds between each pitch. There's just time, and I mean that's the one sport where even if you're sitting at a football game for 3 hours, there's a lot of action. Even
that's
if
right.
I think they say there's only technically like 15 minutes, but it's a lot of hand wringing and
Yep,
tension and things like that. Where baseball, that's the romantic aspect.
yeah, yeah,
I do
yeah.
like the Cardinals. Like it's funny because out here in Maryland, there's a lot of bird watching, and we actually live
Okay,
right off of a trail where there's
okay,
and a lot of cardinals. So
yep,
it's kind of neat talking about what a cardinal means when you see it. It's a loved one that's making a visit. So it's funny because one of the things that I look for a lot of times are like say you're not a cardinal fan, but I look for like patches of like the birds because it's something that I can connect with my 3-year-old
Ah,
or my 9-year-old
that's
daughter
cool.
who's about to be 10. Like, yeah, they love Cardinals, so I have a lot of Cardinal patches of baseball players.
Well, here's so because you and I were already talking before recording, dude, you have been like on a marathon conversation with me. So I know kids are upstairs, although I'm not seeing smoke or anything yet, but um, so we can get closer to the landing here. So,
Right.
um, kind of final things I want to talk about with you is just looking back in your life. You've worked in the hospitality industry. I mean, obviously, you could have podcasts and alone on just stories, but just like looking back and was like either facing some adversity or working with people or just any life lessons, pictures, stories come to mind.
Yeah, from hospitality especially, you're dealing with people, and like I said earlier, you really don't know what people are going through, and
Yep.
you certainly get an appreciation for the different walks of lives, and everybody coming together for a common goal, and to try to achieve what we can. But yeah, I mean, there's lots of funny stories that I have to talk about it, but at the same time, I just I do miss that part of it, and just seeing how people from all walks of life. I mean, it really gave me an appreciation for the struggles that people go through. And it's, working in management and things like that, it's easy to get upset when somebody has to call out because their kid's sick or something like that. And you just don't really know what everybody else is going through. And you just have to appreciate what you have,
Hmm.
and how you're able to overcome some of those things. But as far as how the hospitality industry shaped me, I wouldn't necessarily say that that's who I was. But as far as any funny anecdotes from that, I don't know if I technically we I've been I've worked in haunted hotels. I've worked in
Dang.
everything along the lines. And yeah, I mean, there were times. I mean, like I said, I don't want to take this too far south, but there were definitely some deaths in the industry. We actually, when I was working in my last hotel during COVID, we turned into a medical facility. So the
Wow.
University of Maryland turned, because they had to quarantine COVID patients, they sent them over to our hotel.
Man.
Yeah, there were some crazy things. So we were dealing with people like homeless people, and even like I said, it's easy to say, well, a homeless person, like, well, wonder what
Yep.
they did to
Yeah.
to get
Yeah.
to that point. It's just
Sure.
you get a different perspective, and I mean, they're talking a lot of crazy stuff a lot of the time, and a lot of drug use and things of that nature. But it really gives you an appreciation of just like mankind, and
Yeah.
being patient with people.
Hmm.
So, I mean,
Hmm.
I think it just helped me get out some of the things that were troubling me, I guess, throughout the course of my life. But yeah, I wouldn't
Hmm.
trade that for anything. And to get to where I am now, it's funny how things kind of work out for the best. I
Yeah.
I wouldn't be where I am right now if I didn't take the path that I did, and I'm pretty
Hmm.
happy and comfortable with where I am now. Having this conversation with you today
Yeah.
on all
Dude,
the
that
things.
dude, that's such a good reminder. Like, I mean, really for any of us, but just the reminder of like the path in life that we can second guess a lot, or why did I do this or what? But it just seems like um, God works our lives out, and like where you went doesn't seem to be coincidental, and which direction led to this or that, or it seems like you really feel blessed with where you're at now.
Yeah, I mean, just upsetting people on the internet now. It's like I want to be able to watch my own Dateline episode of, like, it's not. I'm gonna leave a trail of crumbs for the investigators. Like, but now I'm getting to the point that's like, are there more people who aren't suspects in my eventual death than there are people who are actually possible for are capable of killing me? So I'm trying to toe the line. Can I get to that point where, like, I actually have less people who are possible? But my address isn't published.
Oh,
The house is under my wife's name, so that's good. And she
that's
doesn't she doesn't have the same last. I mean, she's like I said, she's been her for the
yeah,
last 45 years. So she's
yeah, yeah,
being who she is in a professional aspect, for her to change her name, it just wasn't
for
wasn't
sure.
important. So yeah, that's pretty much my only saving grace.
And so it's your added layer of protection in the house as well. Then.
Pretty much.
So
Yeah.
there's one more
She's
layer.
always like, we moved into this and there was a security system and we didn't pay for the actual, service. And she's like, why do you keep pushing me to like, re-up our security system, like with all the cameras and everything? I'm like, I may have upset another person over a baseball card transaction on the internet. So let's get those cameras working now. How about that? Yeah, which opens another whole can of worms. Which whatever, we won't get into that.
Oh my
But yeah,
gosh.
I don't know. It's getting to a point now. There's 1 hour datelines and 2 hour datelines. I think if I murdered it, it can definitely be one of the 2 hour datelines.
Oh my gosh. Well, I will say this, I've had a pretty long conversation with you. It's been awesome. And I feel my face hurting laughing like I did back in high school. So uh, nothing has changed, and all kinds of things have changed in life.
Right,
So
pretty much.
that's right. So the last question I have, unless you have any other things to share, like recipes or anything for crab boils or anything, is we're 45. I keep going back to this, and there's this great quote, especially for men. We get into middle age, and someone said that the secret of a successful life is not to die before one's death.
Hmm.
A lot of Walking Dead, just where we just kind of go on losing our zest for life. I
Right.
feel like you're someone that continues to, from afar, inspire me. Just there's a spark in you of just life, humor. I feel evident in this conversation. Any closing words on that for your own life of what keeps your spark?
Yeah, I just don't feel as old. I'm still a kid at heart. I like I said, I have matured some. I know that might be hard for some to believe. But yeah, like I said, getting in a having a relationship, and marriage is hard. I've had two marriages now. It's being able to understand each other and make things work.
Mm-hmm.
I try to take care of myself as far as my health and things of that nature. But a lot of people are like, man, I don't want to go through. I'm gonna live until I die. I mean, it's just
Hmm.
sharing that with people who are important to you, and just staying young at heart. Just don't take anything too seriously. I mean, I'm pretty fortunate in that my anxiety levels aren't I'm fortunate in that regard. I mental health and
Mm-hmm.
depression and people are going through a lot of things, and I'm pretty fortunate that I haven't had to suffer for that. I did maybe
Mm-hmm.
in a past lifetime, who knows? But at the same
Sure.
time, I plan on staying true to myself for the rest, and hopefully, I'm glad that you haven't changed at all as well. I mean, you sound the same. I'm sure. I'm sure. Like I said, it's everything that you've been doing is definitely inspirational to me. So you keep fighting, and hopefully we can, stay in touch. So this isn't something that we have to talk about in 30 more years. Because then we're gonna be at the end of our life at that point. Yeah,
This is
we're
true.
coming. So
This is true.
God willing, we're able to have a conversation in 30 years. But
Yeah. Yeah. Well said, man. That's a great kind of bow tie to put on the end of this conversation, and just good reminder. So I appreciate you taking the time to hang out in this conversation and us to share it.
yeah, absolutely. All right. Well, you
Awesome.
take care. All right.
Hope you enjoyed the episode today. Check out the show notes for any links or resources shared in the episode. If you enjoy the podcast, it would be really appreciated if you'd subscribe, leave a 5-star review, and share it with friends. May we all remember these words from writer Mary Oliver. Instructions for living a life. Pay attention, be astonished, tell about it.